I would like to hand it over to our two analysts to cover off on their expectations for tomorrow's October 10 USDA, WASDE, and crop production reports, starting with Terry Reilly of Futures International. Terry, go ahead and kick us off.
Well, tomorrow is going to be a big day. We're going to get fresh supply numbers from USDA. In my opinion, the most important numbers that will come out will be on the corn and beans. But in the corn side, basically for one of the news wires that put out trade estimates, 27 out of 27 analysts are looking for an upward revision in the U.S. corn yield. On average, they're looking for 3 bushel increase to about 174.7 million bushels. That would be very large, in my opinion. And regardless of what USDA does with acreage, we're looking at a record production. It just basically, there's been a lot of talk whether or not the FSA numbers will be incorporated in this particular report for the planted area and thus changing the harvested area. But from what we're hearing out there, talking to producers and selected merchants, is there are a lot of farmers that have been collecting corn for silage. So there is that small window of possibility we actually may see an upward revision in the harvested area, regardless of what USDA does with the planted area. If there is any changes in the planted area, there might be a minor reduction. But overall, we're looking at a record crop. It's really easy to make a bearish argument because of this. For this particular report, I can't really find too many bullish points that would actually come out in tomorrow's report. Crop conditions are near record, and right now everything looks fantastic. However, a lot of the corn crop is still yet to be harvested, and there's a good amount of corn that will be left in fields and maybe harvested maybe a couple weeks later than usual. So the chatter is that will USDA change the planted and harvested area down or revise it? Well, if not in this report that we see any surprises, and I don't think we'll see any surprises, it's important to maybe jump a little bit forward and look for maybe changes in the area in the November report. But keep that in mind. But on the for the carryout, basically the average trade guess is around 2.1 billion bushels. That's roughly up about 350 million bushels from USDA's September forecast. That's due in part to the adjustment of the September 1 stocks report. But on paper, from a fundamental perspective, it's pretty bearish. There's plenty of corn that's going to be left over at the end of the year. As far as changes in the demand side, feed and residual will be properly adjusted for the old crop, maybe up 50 to 55 million bushels, or down 50 to 55 million bushels. But the question is whether or not USDA will actually take that change and downward revise new crop corn for feed usage. In my opinion, I'm actually looking for an increase. If they find more corn, if they report a much larger production, USDA will find a home for it, or at least for most of it. And they'll probably take corn for feed residual up a little bit, maybe even justify taking exports up as well. So that's basically the main points that I would be looking for in tomorrow's report. The global numbers won't be as important as maybe the U.S. supply side.
Great, thank you, Terry. And I should have mentioned that this is Terry's second time joining us on our crop report panel. Thank you so much for joining us again. Jack, you've been with us a number of times today. You're going to talk a little bit about expectations for soybeans tomorrow. So I'll pass the mic to you.
And like corn, there's no real optimistic view in terms of price when it comes to the soybeans production or ending stocks estimates. Production being estimated by the trade at 3.977 billion bushels is the average trade guess, just under 4 billion bushels, and a lot of talk that we could see perhaps an upper revision later on in November or January to something over 4 billion bushels. The average yield was increased a full bushel, one exact bushel per acre, to 47.6 by the trade. and harvested acres were cut by about 400,000 acres, which is probably a pretty reasonable guess based off of the FSA data that we've seen so far. The chatter around the FSA data for the corn also exists in soybeans, with some more bullish traders expecting USDA to really have to cut acreage quite a bit more than what we're showing and what I mentioned here, just because of the lower FSA data. I'm not too sure I agree with that. My trips around the Midwest, I realize there's holes here and there, but it did look like pretty much everything got planted up. So even though there probably is a slight downward revision, I would think it would be a slight downward revision, and certainly the trade expectations would probably encompass all of that. To comment a little bit more about production, I guess. Yield reports through the Delta and into the southern Midwest have been just fabulous. Pretty much record yields being reported by just about any producer you might want to talk to. I do expect that to modify somewhat as the harvest moves farther north. Already I've heard in some areas say north of Interstate 80, especially say west of Chicago, in that quadrant, somewhat more variable yield reports. But even those more variable yield reports, it's hard to find somebody that's really getting under his average yield, his average reportable yield. So I think we're well on the way to a record production in soybeans as we are for corn, and I expect USDA to go a long way towards reflecting that in the reports tomorrow. USDA should also show healthy ending stocks estimates for this coming year, or the year that we're in right now. The average trade guess about 478 million bushels for the ending stocks next year, with some guesses all the way up to about 550 million bushels, and really very little change on a month-to-month basis from what USDA was showing last year. I think eventually probably we'll end up creeping higher, especially if the production creeps higher. We're going to have a little bit of trouble. CONAB, for example, down in Brazil came out today with a production estimate for their new crop down in Brazil for the coming year, which is still getting put in the ground, of over 90 million tons, which is a huge crop. I can remember starting in this business, being on the floor 25, 30 years ago, and if they produced 12 or 13 million tons, that was a huge crop. We were all thrilled to death. So that just shows you how Brazil, how big a powerhouse they've become. And of course the Argentines, I expect them to plant a lot of soybeans as well. So we're going to have plenty of competition as we get into the new year. And I expect that'll probably be a little bit of an issue as we move forward. I wouldn't really expect USDA to do too much to the supply-demand report. Of course, they'll have to incorporate whatever increase in supply that they do they do find in the production side of the reports tomorrow. But they can probably be justified in leaving the demand side virtually unchanged for right now.